collective reality or personal reality. And you can bring that right down into, say, pathology or discomfort in your body.
These are not like traditional illness kind of symptoms. And especially I think as the society we live in becomes more aware, they do become more conscious. They start to look at these things of, oh, I could get support for that.
Like, it's okay, but it's okay. It's free. So I'll just go again, even though maybe the percentage of results could be quite low.
I feel that in my heart too. Mm-hmm. And it's something to work through. And I'm grateful to be in it in this way. It's real. On today's show, we had Pam Dhillon, a good friend of mine. We work together in the clinic in Vernon. She is a quantum healer, does BodyTalk and so many other layers of magic. And it seems quite mystical to me and very practical. She was a massage therapist for almost 20 years as well. So she has an incredible amount of experience, knowledge, and wisdom. We dove into all of that, and we dove into what it's like being a practitioner as well, and felt like there were some really special moments. If anybody out there is an aspiring practitioner, maybe you're just getting started, I think this will be a really good episode to listen to, and feel really grateful for the conversation we had. I hope you all enjoy the episode. I feel like we're in a beautiful setting right here, right now. Gonna have an epic conversation together. And it's cozy. I've got slippers on for anybody that can't see, and they're super comfortable. I'm sitting by the fire. It's crackling away there. And
I have my rainbow unicorn socks on.
Okay, we got rainbow unicorn socks, and we've got Pam Dhillon on this podcast, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you. And if you would like to say a few words about you, please do so, and then we'll dive right in.
Thank you, Kevin. First of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. It's such an honor. An honor because not only because of who you are as a practitioner, as a leader, but as a deep friend to me. And so this feels to me like a conversation that we're having in this public way, but it also feels like really deeply intimate and fun and like this kind of personal way too, which I really am enjoying. So I just want to say that before I say hello. I'm Pam, and I get to work with Kevin daily at our clinic in Vernon. I've been a practitioner of many things for about 20 years.
Oh yeah, we're going to get into all that too.
All of that. So it started with manual work with massage therapy, and then moved that into energetics and consciousness-based medicine. So that's my shtick.
Amazing. Yeah. Why don't we use that as a jumping off point? So there's so many questions I want to ask. I think the first one will be, let's talk about consciousness a little bit and consciousness-based medicine. And let's unpack your work a little bit more, and maybe even what a visit looks like or sessions with you. And I know they can look like anything, but there's still a general current, there's an intention, there's a way that shows up. And so what's that looking like in your life now?
These days?
Yeah, these days. Because I know there's been a powerful evolution, and I would love to unpack that a little bit more as we go through the podcast, is kind of the more specifics. But let's start now, and then we can rewind back from there.
Right. So with consciousness-based medicine, like the foundation of your session is going to be based on the idea that your thoughts, universal thoughts, collective thoughts, is what really creates our reality. Collective reality or personal reality. And you can bring that right down into, say, pathology or discomfort in your body. So if there is something that's in your body that is causing dis-ease or uncomfortability, there is usually what I see and what I try to look for is a root being in a place of thought, in a place of a belief system or a conditioned idea that has come from yourself or from your ancestry, a parent perhaps, but also we go into the quantum healing side of maybe not just that, maybe into a past life. So soul lineage, aspects of consciousness that can compound into this existence that can create roots for your reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this is a part that I'm really fascinated by in my own practice as well, is that so many cases I've seen over the years, especially chronic illness or especially things that are really stubbornly baked into the system, or somebody's seen 20, 30 or 40 doctors and they show up in the clinic and they're like, hey, I've been everywhere. I've done everything. You're my last resort. What can you do? And immediately now I'll think of what are all the things that haven't been addressed? What hasn't been seen here yet? And what that has led me to in my own career is expanding the scope of view of what might be actually influencing here. And so you mentioned a few things, and, for some, this might resonate, and for others, that's okay. Just, we invite you to be curious, but, past lives, for example, ancestral, we can get into genetics and epigenetic expression of our family lineages and the things that we carry. There's a tremendous book by Mark Wolin, and it is called It Didn't Start With You. And that book is really focused on all the things in our genetics and our lineage and patterns, especially traumas, wounds, celebrations too, gifting as well, that travel through our lineage and land in our bodies, and then they express at different points throughout our lives. So, I think over the years, especially where I began in practice, was that it's just about the body. It's about right here, right now. Here's what we learned. Here's the symptoms. Chinese medicine is pretty good with this because it does get into the root issues. But when did you start getting really curious about looking at more avenues than, just somebody's physicality, their system on the table of whatever symptoms are coming up for them? You'd be working with your hands. As you mentioned, you're a massage therapist for 20 years. So you got to know people's bodies really well, but you got to know people too. So I'm curious what opened that up, or what created that spark that there's got to be more. At least that was part of my story, is there's more going on here, especially cases that wouldn't resolve immediately. You know what I mean? Totally.
And that's, I think what it was is if you know me really well, you know that I'm a bit of a perfectionist.
Guilty over here. Let's just pause and take that in for all the perfectionists out there.
And I strive always to kind of get a certain result. Like that's a driving force for my system. No joke. My life's work in Gene Keys is Gene Key 18. So the city of perfection. So I've been contemplating that word a lot in my life. And the gift of that is integrity. Right?
Love that. Yeah.
And so in my practice as a massage therapist, before I knew what BodyTalk was or quantum healing, these other modalities, I always knew, first of all, that I wanted to do something that was energetic too. I just didn't know what it was. I hadn't met the right modality yet.
Yeah.
Because everything had a bit of a ceiling to me. I felt like it was a box for the things that I was introduced to at that time. So I was curious. I knew what was going to come, but I also knew that I wanted to get to know the physical body as much as I possibly could before I stepped into the next arena.
Yeah.
But so there was a point where it was really satisfying just to work in the physical realm because I was learning. And it was good. And I didn't rush it too much. I also have like the line 6, which is like nice slow motion kind of movement in life. And there was then a moment where there was this frustration that started to come through in some of the sessions that I was like, I'm not feeling successful in here, because even though these massages are revered, why are they coming back the next week with the same issue? And they're like, oh, it's fine though. You helped me out. I feel good for 5, 6, 7 days. I've got all this coverage. I can come see you whenever I want. I'll come back next week and I'll get the same massage and I'll feel better for a few days. And then you can do it again the week after.
Oh yeah. I'll just jump in here for a second, because I think you and I both share this, which is maybe why we work together really well and lots of other reasons, but maybe it's Gene Key 18 because I have that in my chart as well. And this is the part of the integrity, the gift of integrity, is that if you know or you feel like there's something more, to me, it feels like it is in integrity to follow that and to listen to that and uncover that, because like you, results are the main thing that I'm focused on. Maybe that's the pragmatic aspect, is somebody's coming in, they need help. Let's help them get that. Let's get some results. And so I love how you shared that. It's like almost that frustration. And I'm curious, was it that you're like, I know there's more here?
Absolutely.
What is it actually?
Because that's also, as again, I'm going to talk a lot about Gene Keys and human design, because we both love it. So as a projector, also as in human design, the two things to know that you're working in your grace and in your design for a projector is success. You have to feel successful. And if you're frustration or bitterness is the when you're not living your truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was starting to feel that bitterness and that frustration. And I go, and I didn't know what that was then, but something just didn't feel right. And then that brings us back to the integrity piece of like, there is more here. And I need to know what this is because I'm feeling frustrated. And I like to say like, I felt like a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to be a Band-Aid.
Better results.
Yeah.
Really?
Right. And so it was that guidance system of me going, when I'm feeling a little bit bitter or frustrated, that's me going, okay, I need to reroute myself. And this thing isn't really working for me anymore. There's something more I need to investigate. And then of course, that at that opportune time is when BodyTalk came into my life. And I wasn't thinking of like, I should do this training. I found it for me. And I found results in it personally. And then 10 months into being a client of BodyTalk, I was like, this is the modality that to me doesn't feel like it has a ceiling or a box or anything. And I feel like this is going to be that missing piece of allowing that deeper wounding that happens that the body's carrying to be seen. And so then perhaps when people come in for their massages, I won't feel like a Band-Aid anymore. And I can come back into feeling successful. And I can find that integrity in their body in a way that's deeper than muscles, bone, and fascia.
Yeah, just the physical.
Mm-hmm.
So what did that moment feel like when you were doing BodyTalk, like for yourself,
mm-hmm.
and it started to land? There must have been a moment where part of you probably was like, holy shit. Because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
But then when you do learn something, there's an interesting feeling. At least I've experienced that too. So what was that moment like for you? Because I know you as a super gifted practitioner now, but what was it like then? What happened for you?
It happened in the first session.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't like, 6 months in, I was like, this stuff is pretty cool. Like in that first session, I was hooked. So I think, an hour, maybe 45 minutes on the actual table, moving through this session, this formula with my practitioner. And I didn't know the vocabulary then. I didn't know what she was really kind of speaking to. It was kind of beyond my conscious knowing. But what I knew by the end of that hour is that I felt different.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel different like on the surface. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was not even something I can really explain. It was deeper. There was like, there's something in the core of my body that just shifted.
Do you remember much of that session? Are you open to going back down memory lane a little bit of what was that first session like? Because the felt sensation you've named.
Yeah.
But maybe you could walk people through your experience of your own first session, because we'll get into you providing this service and, magical healing for many, many people. But this is really cool for me. I haven't heard the depth of this is, ground zero of quantum medicine, BodyTalk.
Yeah.
What happened through that session for you?
I think I did journal about it. And when I was packing my journals to move up to Vernon 4 years ago, I remember reading it and going, I'm going to keep this entry. And now I'm trying to remember what I wrote.
And when would that have been? Like
that would have
10
been
years ago or something?
No, it was more than that, probably 12 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And I went for emotional support, for like romantic interest support, like heartbreak.
The story of humanity,
right?
Love, romance. Yes.
The grand initiator.
Yes, of course. Why do people write poetry and music and do the things they do or run ultra marathons? Probably from heartbreak and love. Why do we do these things?
That is what got me on this path, this heartbreak.
Of course. Oh, that feels so romantic. Of course, it's the beginning of the story. Chapter 1, the heartbreak.
The heartbreak.
Pam goes to BodyTalk for support.
Oh, seriously. It was dark. It was dark. And I can't, honestly, I have to look back at that journal entry, but I can't remember exactly all the pieces that came through in the session. But what I do remember, it wasn't directly related to this relationship.
It was related to something else,
yeah,
which often is the case, right?
That's right. And so I was like, okay, she didn't even talk about this relationship. What the heck? She didn't even like bring up this person's name or like speak to what was happening in that last couple of weeks where I was like in torture.
Yeah.
And she was speaking about some other shit. And I felt different, even though she didn't speak to my agenda.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Or and it was because it was my agenda. There was something deeper she was speaking to, and I recognize it as the deeper wounding, those roots that I was not aware of, or where was I in, within those roots that was manifesting into that relationship that I wasn't aware of. And she was hitting those things, really deeply.
The patterns.
Yeah.
Well, and the parallel to this in my mind is in our daily lives or in relationships, friends, coworkers, whatever it is, kids, parents, you name it. There'll be something that comes up that creates a bit of disharmony, or maybe there's a bit of conflict or discord. And, the example would be like, you didn't do the dishes, or you left this dirty socks out, or, choose whatever domestic bliss example you want. But so much of the time, it's not about that. And this is what I found as a practitioner. Somebody comes in and they think it's this one thing, and they're like, this is what I need help with. And then we might unpack 5 or 6 or 10 other things that don't directly relate to that, but they indirectly very much do. But there's always something deeper. And I think this is one of the most intriguing things about the work that I get to do, and the work that you've done and continue to do. And I've been on the receiving end of many amazing, blissful treatments from you, that our mind likes to have a story of, this is my issue. And especially, I just shout out to all the practitioners and guides and coaches out there, where you do your own coaching, you do your own guiding, and you show up to get support from somebody else, and you think, I already got it figured out. And I'm going to tell them this one thing. Here's what I need from you. It's just this thing. And then, as any tremendous practitioner will tell you, treating practitioners is a really funny thing, because they want to kind of treat themselves. And I'm not trying to project, or like, I've done this.
Yeah.
Where I got most of it figured out, or I believe I have most of it figured out, of, I'm already at the root of this. Could you just maybe help this thing shift? And then somehow we end up in some other total tangent that actually relates to something much deeper. And this is why I continue to get tons of treatment and support and sessions from other people, because I can't do everything on my own. I tried, and there's a lot I can do, but having a witness to be able to see those deeper places, or guide you in a way where you can kind of find those answers, you're going to end up in maybe a deeper place or a more illuminated space at times. I've had huge breakthroughs and insights on my own, and I've had so many massive changes by getting support. And some of that is on the table, getting sessions with you. So there's that exciting part, right, of being a practitioner of, we never know what we're going to find. There's all kinds of stuff in there. And after you've done thousands and thousands of visits, there's patterns, there's patterns that emerge. So when a patient comes to see you now, or a client comes to see you now, what is the step that you take first? And then where does it go from there?
I love to do just like a basic, like an informal interview. Not that like BodyTalk is based on guiding the session through like priority versus agenda. So really,
can you just unpack that a little bit?
Yeah.
What is priority versus agenda?
Yeah. So agenda is, say for instance, in that first example of me going to that first session for BodyTalk, my agenda was this particular relationship and the feelings I was having in that particular relationship. That was my agenda.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I'm coming in with, of wanting that person to like really deeply just look at that.
Yeah, like I could come in and say, hey, my low back is in pain and spasm or stiffness, and this is my agenda. Please help me with that.
Right. And so if we're coming in for, say, a massage, and that's your agenda,
yeah,
and I do my physical assessment on you, I'm like, oh, it's actually tight quads. Your quadriceps, the origin is pulling on that part of your pelvis, the SISs, and it's rotating your pelvis. Your QLs are actually okay, so let me work on your quads instead.
Yeah.
And you're like, what do you mean? Don't work on my quads.
Yeah, do the work on my back.
Work on my low back. I'm like, but the issue is you've got tight hip flexors and quads.
Yeah.
And so I want, and then then becomes a priority. So the priority is what should happen, or what your body actually wants. So it's like saying, if I was to work on the person's low back the whole time, I'm actually out of integrity.
Especially if you know that there's more connected to it.
Right.
Because you want to get the root issue. Right.
A root issue. And then if the root issue is the quadriceps, because of how tight they are for the low back tension, and I go, okay, well, I'm just going to disregard that priority to actually let that person feel better. I'm going to go with their agenda. So they feel good and they feel like, okay, they just got what they wanted for the money that they paid.
Yeah.
what am I doing there? I'm basically completely out of integrity of what was actually needed. So that's an example, say in massage therapy, but that's the same thing even for BodyTalk or consciousness-based medicine or quantum healing. It's that we have this conscious knowing of of our pain that we can see on a screen. Like my pain is in this relationship. And I've been in this for X amount of time, and this is where I really can feel it. And this is where it's like presented in a conscious way. But in the subconscious aspects of where it actually exists in those roots, the priority, if I can't, it's not, the priority is deeper. It's going to be in a deeper wounding that maybe is stemmed, like I said, into childhood or different realms or dimensions or past lives or parallel lives or whatever the root ends up being in. And if I kind of just pluck away the leaves of your tree because that's what your agenda is, versus actually trying to dig down into the roots and pluck it from there, then really where's the service there again too? So my intention always with sessions is to honor the priority, which is getting to the roots, even though you might not recognize that what I'm speaking to in that session is the root to the dying leaf on the tree.
Well, and in Chinese medicine, the parallel would be, they call it root and branch treatment. I love the analogy of the tree. My teachers taught me this. If somebody comes in and they have incredible amount of acute pain, we do want to address that. And I am always thinking, what is at the root here? Why is this happening? Something is occurring in their system. There's an imbalance. There's a disturbance somewhere. Let's find where that blockage is and resolve that. And maybe that does take a few treatments to get down to the actual roots, because we need to decrease the pain or decrease the inflammation and get the body in even a little bit more harmony. And then it starts to unravel from there. The part that I'm often amazed at is watching people come out of your treatment room, because I get firsthand experience, my patients too. But I think both of us go really deep, really quickly, quite often. And sometimes that can be a lot to take in. You come in thinking this one thing, and then you leave having this full past life regression session that connected to all these different points of your ancestry and massive insights. And so there can be a lot that happens in a visit with you. Sure. And again, I've experienced that, and it never ceases to amaze me that I really don't know where it's going to go, but I'm grateful that I went there. I'm grateful that I had the journey, and now I have the insight or the release. And I would say maybe one of the greatest things that I've experienced with treatment with you is I leave with a greater understanding of me and whatever it is that I am struggling with, whether it's heartbreak or any of those things, or just physical pain. Or the other thing I love about Chinese medicine, and I think in your work in some ways too, is you don't have to be unwell, have a diagnosis, have a disease or an illness or anything that's named. Maybe you just want to do upgrades. Maybe you just want to address this one key piece in your life, and you know that there's more to it. Maybe you're getting into public speaking and you keep having something blocking your voice, or you're too shy, or you just can't quite communicate. These are not like traditional illness kind of symptoms. And especially I think as the society we live in becomes more aware, they do become more conscious. They start to look at these things of, I could get support for that. I don't actually just have to accept that this is the thing that I'm going to struggle with, or it's not my strong suit. Maybe you do have a gift or a strong suit that is yet to be uncovered. And I've definitely seen that happen a lot with people post session in my, treatment space and in your treatment space, that there's something that is unlocked. Do you want to speak to that a bit more?
And because if we go back to like what happens in the treatment room, I still like having an interview, even though I'm agenda based, because you could just jump on the table. But I like to know those things. I want to know where's either your conscious pain and discomfort, or where do you feel like you're limiting yourself in your highest potential? Like, is it one of these goals of more confidence or whatever they might want? So it could be that you're telling me either one of those things, that, hey, I've got this disease or this pathology or this nervous system condition, or, hey, I'm preparing for this huge event and I need to open up my throat, or I really want to step into my power in the way that's quite activating. And I want to go into my lineage to actually find, like you said before, the gifts that are there and not just the traumas that are there. Yeah. And so when we charge the field with their intention, so it kind of goes beyond that place where I can go, okay, this is their intention. And my job now is to see that this is their agenda. right? But I'm going to go look underneath that to then where is the priority places in their system to allow whatever their intention or their agenda is to kind of come through. So that I'm still going to honor that agenda. I'm still going to honor that intention. But my job is to then kind of, like you said, there's layers to get there.
Well, sometimes there's better questions that we can ask, both as practitioners, but also as clients and patients. Like if you're working with another professional, whether that's somatic therapy or counseling or all the different modalities, acupuncture, I have found over time that when I'm really listening to clients sitting in front of me and they're sharing what is going on, I'm listening with a different perspective. I'm listening to the energy behind what they say, how they say it, their intonations, their body language. And I'm feeling for something more because I know there's always more.
And that's when you can usually see a story already. They say something with a certain kind of energy behind it, and I just kind of start to already notice that their body's showing me this deeper route already, like traveling me down there in that conversation. So I know exactly where we're going by the time you get onto the table.
Well, and this is the next part that I want to unpack a little bit is as a practitioner, and you've been practicing for 20 years now, something like that.
Just about, yeah.
So there's a lot of time with people. There's a lot of time connecting with people, asking questions, doing treatments, assessments, many, many different things. And I get asked this quite a bit. Did my gifting or my intuition, did it start when I was really young? Is it sort of later in life as an adult? What's your experience that you understand now about yourself and that gifting and the intuition and the types of things that have shown themselves with your gifts, you know, unraveling more in a beautiful way?
Yeah. You know, in hindsight, when I look back into my childhood, I can recognize, some, gifting or some deeper awareness of what was happening in my environment. I didn't know that though. Like I wasn't not consciously aware of any of that stuff. So it wasn't like I was talking to the trees or anything when I was a kid consciously that I knew of. So what I consciously have done is taken a lot of courses.
Yeah, a lot of training.
And I want to advocate for that the ability to tap into your subtle senses for your own intuition, it's everybody has it.
We do.
Everybody has it. So there is in a spot where, of course, if I tune into my past lives and the gifting in my system, I've used a lot of sessions to open that up. That it's not just about trauma. It is about this place of activation. So there's a part of my sessions that are about releasing traumas, but there's stepping into the most authentic expression of yourself. So as I was going through my own receiving of BodyTalk, that's what I was really noticing, that I was feeling more like me. I was getting to know myself more. My heart was opening up. When my heart opened up, I saw the gifting poured through. That was locked in there latently that I didn't know about. That has been accumulation of my soul's work for however long my soul's been around for. And I was allowing that to actually open up and blossom. And then of course, if we have maybe different experiences individually as sovereign souls, and so that's going to be depending on what you can open up in this lifetime. So that'll vary for person to person. But to start to remember that and train into it, I did a lot of training, not only in the left brain aspects of these modalities, and BodyTalk has a left brain aspect as well. There's lots of techniques and protocols and all the things, but simultaneously they really nurture your intuitive brain. They really nurture and have classes for like diving in a way of your subtle senses that are in a trained way, not just like, oh, you'll wake up to it one day. Like you practice it. And you practice all of the clairs, like all the clairsentient or clairvoyant or clairaudient or clair, all the things. And you start to know primarily which ones are my strongest.
Yeah.
And you nurture those, but you also cultivate and put effort in the ones that are weaker too. So you can kind of have those aspects in there. And we would do exercises to prove to ourselves how intuitive we actually were. And when you were going through those exercises and you were revealing things about someone's life or a person in their life that you don't even know, and you're reading into them and they're like, holy crap, that was so bang on. How did you do that? Or how are we doing this right now in this class? And you're like, I don't freaking know. I'm just following what's happening in my body, what I'm seeing and noticing. And when you have the confirmation on the other end in these kind of containers of training, then you're like, oh, I can trust myself more.
Yeah.
So it's started to build the place of trust in my conscious mind, because though my soul lineage has a history of this type of life many times, my ego doesn't know that. Pam didn't know that. I still had to learn how to collaborate with my soul and my personality. and allow my personality to understand that this can come through her.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
I think any focus that we have in life, there's going to be more energy that shows up in that direction. And they've shown this from a neurological standpoint in athletics and different things. If you practice a certain movement, you're going to actually lay down more physical myelin sheath on the neural pathways of your brain, which actually allow a faster movement through that pathway. So at this stage now, I would say for both of us, we've spent thousands and thousands of hours practicing these things, because you use the word practice too. And it is a practice. Like anything in life, if you're a pro tennis player and you're practicing that tennis stroke, you're going to get really good at it if you do it for 10 or 20,000 hours. It just so happens that this type of work, alternative medicine, if we want to classify alternative medicine, or just medicine, healing, health, whatever we want to label this as, that is what we've spent thousands of hours doing. And it just opens up more and more. Or at least that's been my experience. The more I work in this way, the more my intuition shows itself, the more clear I get. And then it just keeps going. And then the amount of training, I had a hockey coach tell me this years ago. I played all kinds of sports and hockey was one of the main ones. He said, Kevin, there's often two types of players. There's players that are naturally incredibly talented. And then there's other players that got to work for it a little bit more. And he said, I can tell you the players that I want on my team, the ones that are willing to work and have discipline and show up and put their time in. And he said, I've seen the most gifted, talented players come through this locker room, but the ones that didn't put the work in, they never really went anywhere, or they maybe went somewhere for a little while, but they couldn't continue. They didn't have the work ethic, or they didn't have the discipline, or all the fortitude and the perseverance to keep going when it got difficult. And so then there's people that have both. There's, I think, the inherent talent, and then there's the work. And I think you and I, because we've chatted about this a million times, the training courses, putting your time in over and over and over again on, intellectual pursuits, the left brain and then the right brain, and courses and training in that. And I think the practice of these things, which is why in Chinese medicine, it's the oldest practitioners that are revered so much, is because they've spent 50, 60, 80 years or more cultivating these types of gifts, and then it gets super distilled and really clear and really potent. And I'm kind of reflecting as I'm mentioning this right now, even where I'm at in my own career, that some of my teachers would share with acupuncture, you could really feel the energy at the end of the needle, and you could tell exactly where you were in somebody's tissue. You could tell the meridian, you could tell the flow, if it was forward or backwards or whatever. And I remember thinking, there's no way I can feel that when I was a student. Or I would imagine that I could, but I wasn't. Or maybe little bits, because I was new. So for anybody that's new as a practitioner, do you have any words of guidance, of advice at this point in your career, especially in the early years, that can be a bit messy, a bit difficult? You maybe don't know what you're doing. What would you say either to yourself in the early stages, or other practitioners that are just getting going right now?
Holy smokes. I do remember in massage therapy school, my first trigger point release. And I never could feel it, anything before that. I remember they're like, oh, feel that trigger point right there. And I'm like, I can't feel anything. And then the one day where I felt it and I could feel it melting under my hands. And I was like, holy shit, is that what that is? Anyways, love that. I love the first moment where you feel like I've overcome a threshold of some sort of sensitivity in my system, where there was once upon a time, a part of me that couldn't feel it. And something just happened in this moment. I don't know what the heck it was, because yesterday I couldn't feel it and today I can. And it was spontaneous in my mind. I didn't know what happened between those 2 days.
You'd been working at it though, right?
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. So I think that was what is that perseverance aspect. And so especially then if I go into BodyTalk, early BodyTalk years of being a practitioner, you're trained at first to muscle check. So you take the hand of the client and you muscle check on their hand to make sure you're being guided down the path of BodyTalk and into creating a formula for them, a session for them. That's really, you're making sure you're doing you're right on the money.
Yeah. Like good treatment.
Good treatment. So you're muscle checking the whole thing. And now my muscle checking has become more like internal. Like you can feel the yes or no inside your body, which I was watching my practitioner or my teachers do. And I was like, how the heck?
How do they know already?
They didn't even touch their hand and they already know what the formula is. Or download it in 3 seconds. And I'm sitting here for an hour trying to break it out. And I've got this notepad and I'm writing all my notes down and I've got this flow charts and all my books are out and they're all open. And I, in the beginning I get like a yes. And I go, was that truly a yes? Did I really get that right? And I would double check it like 4 times. And then you would have, the universe kind of going, okay, Pam, if you can't trust yourself, you can't do the work. Like you have to at a certain point surrender and be confident with your first answer. So that took a long time.
Well, and the practice is what builds the confidence though, because if you're not actually doing it or using it, there's no forward progress. And I guess this is part of it, that we have to be willing to make mistakes, mess up a little bit, because that is ultimately how we learn, even as practitioners.
It's a practice.
Back to the practice.
It's a practice. And so the beginning of that was this practice of, I would have like my notebook literally on the client's belly because they're laying on the table so I can make sure I'm doing the right flow of stuff and muscle checking everything. And I had to write the whole formula down, and that's how to progress. And I was like, am I ever going to get to a place where I don't need these books or where I don't have to write this all down? I can hold the formula in my body and my mind. I don't need to like make sure every single step is written down so I can keep in my place in where we are in the body.
Yeah.
And it took, again, perseverance and a lot of practice and hours of giving sessions. I did that for a couple of years before I actually practiced it professionally. I wanted to be in a certain place of practice before I said, okay, now I'm ready to put this on my actual professional menu. And even then I was this was probably now 10 or more years ago, where I was like, even still before a client would come in for BodyTalk versus massage, I would be like a nervous wreck going, how the heck, what if I don't notice anything? What if nothing comes up? What if I fail? What if I can't find anything in their system? And of course, something would always show up and I could always find a balance for them. And it was just that practice. And I knew innately that in the beginning, while I was practicing, I just would remember that, if this is consciousness medicine and frequency. And if there is something that I'm doing incorrectly, I'd apologize to the universe and know that it wouldn't affect them in a harmful way. Because it would just basically, the worst thing that could happen in a BodyTalk session is that nothing happens.
You just don't get the results you want.
That's it. And so I was like, it's okay that it's a practice in the beginning. I'm not going to injure anybody or cause harm in a way. It's just going to have to take a bit more sessions perhaps for me to get the same result that I can now get. 10 sessions back then is 1 session now. In my practice, because of that refinement and that trust within myself, I can get a lot more done in a session today than I did 10 years ago, because of my trust in myself and that refinement of what I know now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and this is something that can't be skipped. There's a term that I heard years ago I really liked and it resonated. It was called earned wisdom. Mm-hmm. And I have so much gratitude for all the people that I've learned from, the doctors in school, the practitioners, the coaches, the healers, the therapists, all people that I've worked with like personally, and then other ones that were more of a mentorship, that they had been through that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the really tremendous practitioners that I know, they've all been through quite a bit of stuff in their life. Like it wasn't easy necessarily. And there's a lot of grit and there's a lot of perseverance, I think, that is in some ways almost necessary to squeeze those gifts to the surface, that we do need challenges at times. And sure, we can have spontaneous healings and awakenings too. All of that is fair game. But the people that I realize I resonate with, that they're tough, they're grounded, they're clear, they've had a lot of life experience, and it has translated in their systems into wisdom. Because I've also found experience doesn't equal wisdom. Mm-hmm. People sometimes make the same mistakes over and over and over again. You could say, well, they're getting a lot of experiences. It doesn't necessarily translate to wisdom or to advice that could really deeply resonate. And, I'm just kind of reminiscing as you're sharing these things of the early days of my practice. When I look back, the things I think I got wrong, but I was doing my best. I was showing up. I was reading the books. I was putting in a lot of time and energy. And now it's not required in the same way, but I'm learning in a new way, or I'm learning in a different way. And I learn something with every single patient that I see, every retreat that I do, every experience, that there's always something in it for me as well, this is also the reason I continue to get treatment is number one, I want to stay healthy. I want to be clear. I want to make sure I'm as aligned as possible so that I can be of the highest levels of service when somebody comes in. Then I better be pretty dialed in. And the more balanced and clear that I am, the better I can deliver on being of service. I've definitely seen that. So if you're a practitioner out there and you're not getting the results that you want, or you're not as busy as you want, or people aren't booking in, I would say you are 100% responsible for that. And it took me quite a few years to notice that. And maybe that's the next place we'll go here, is that, you know, when we are stepping into a clinical role or a clinical space, treatment space of any kind, what do you think are some of the most important pieces to have in place for yourself?
As a practitioner? As
a practitioner. We'll speak about the practitioner side first.
For me, I'm really sensitive to environments. So for me to be set up in a space, a treatment space that feels flowy and has a good rhythm to the room, if that makes sense. That's really important. And I think I like to take just this place of like a clean slate every day, where there might have been really big things that happened the day before in that room, and big moments and emotions or things with clients. And I don't want that to kind of like plug up what I'm doing the next day or even for the next person.
Yeah, so you don't want any interference.
And so I'll even say that that's between every client. Then I'll actually take a moment, and it just takes a moment to reset the field, to reset the environment. And it's just an intention, as in just a breath, knowing that I'm like resetting myself. And that when I come out of my room to approach the next client coming in, I am like a brand new version of me. And I'm not bringing in the old stuff in that new person. So even if depending on what that other client previous to them was bringing in, or how I felt about it versus what's coming in next, there has to be a moment where you pause for yourself and you just hit a reset button, whatever that looks to you.
Well, in the morphogenic field, for people that don't know, there's a lot of different ways to describe it. The way I see it is there's a lot of information available around us all the time. And so in this example specifically, let's say in really busy practices where they're seeing a lot of people back to back to back, and there's no real breaks or there's no stopping in between. I'm not saying that's bad or good. I'm not judging that at all. And at the same time, what I've learned from myself energetically and energetic hygiene is that there is a resetting, because then you're renewed each time. You're going to offer better service. That's my projection. My judgment is that maybe that's true. And somebody stepping into a really clear space that could allow their highest healing, because there is energetic residue. And again, you could believe me or not, anybody that's listening, but I'm just going to give you my take for a second, that when you step into a room, that's maybe somebody in there just had a huge release of grief or anger or is in an incredible amount of pain. And I would say this is especially true for people that are more sensitive and more gifted in that way, that they can pick up these different things. That might influence them quite a bit, and they may not know why. I think about this in schools. Whose desk are you sitting in next? Was it somebody who is grounded and clear and focused, or somebody who was really challenged, went through big violence or trauma, that morning? The energy is alive all around us all the time. So I'm glad you mentioned space, like the physical space. And I know you really well. And I am often jealous of how pristine you keep your space. Like I want you to come in and design and redesign my space all the time. And you have in the clinic. Short story, when I went to Ireland last year, the lovely people in my clinic, my staff, Pam included, redid my treatment room, and I loved it. I loved it when I got back. I was surprised, and it felt way better. I think there was the feminine touch that was really needed, that it was cleaned up. It was more clear. You guys redid the artwork. There was you painted things, and it just felt so good to come into it. I needed that.
Go into your room at the end of every day and reset it how I first said. Now there's two male practitioners, or well, none of the female too. There's 3 practitioners that work out of that room. 2 of them are male. I'm not projecting on men at all
The
right
masculine,
now.
Yeah.
but for me, I was like, oh man, boys.
Are we drifting?
Just straighten that
drifting.
sheet a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, we are. So that is one of the things I love about the way that you carry yourself, because that makes a difference with treatment.
Yeah.
Because it makes a difference for us as practitioners, for sure. If you got a doctor who just saw 30 people before you, and again, I don't know if this is true or not. I can just imagine if they're not grounding and resetting themselves, do you know how much energetic residue they may have picked up that day that is now bleeding into each of the other treatments that is coloring their view of things? I've been on the receiving end of that, and I knew it. I could feel it. They weren't really present. They weren't listening to what I was saying, both actually in the way of the communication, but on the energetic side, there was nothing. And so this is, I think, where we are wanting to build a big bridge between conventional medicine and alternative medicine, that any practitioner listening to this, regardless of what you're doing, take a moment and pause to clear your energy in between patients. They're going to benefit, you're going to benefit, and you're really going to increase your results. And so if there's people not coming into your space, there's a reason for that. And again, it doesn't mean you're not a good practitioner. I've experienced this, and I'm going to tangent this for a moment, that in the past, if I had any gaps in my schedule at all, first my mind would be like, oh no, I suck. Nobody's coming to see me. And you go into the doubt spiral or the inadequacy or whatever it might be. That's what I would do. And then as I learned and I got more experience, I got better results. I started becoming more confident. When I started seeing gaps in my schedule or people canceling, nobody showing up, I would start to enjoy that time and space of, I need a breather. This is really good. And sometimes that's exactly what it was. I needed to reset myself. I needed to reground. I needed to clear some of my own energy. And then as soon as I did that, boom, people would book immediately. Or I was going through a transformation to a higher level of service, and I needed to go and do that and get a session from somebody and clear some anger, clear some grief, integrate some unintegrated material that was maybe starting to enter the treatment space that wasn't serving my patients. And I swear to you, every time I did that, that space in the booking schedule would immediately fill up. Literally that day or the next day. And sometimes an entire week would fill up immediately. And I started to realize, wow, we have huge influence on what goes on in our schedules and what goes on in our treatment rooms, how successful we are, what kind of results we get, that there's a huge amount of responsibility here as a practitioner. What's your experience been with that?
Oh my gosh. Oh, Kevin, you've seen me go through this.
You've seen me go through it too.
There's I started working with you in your office 4 years ago, just under. And of course, moving my practice from, being in one place prior to that for 10 years, mostly just RMT work, some BodyTalk. I would do BodyTalk outside of hours. So I was working crazy hours.
Yeah, you were in your not self projector. For any human design factors out there, Pam was masquerading as an ultra super generator. Yeah. I used to do that too. We're learning. Carry on.
Learning. And then, and of course I had to move practices and move cities. And that means building another practice. And also I want to build it in a different way. I was really intentional that I wanted to not build it how I was, but I also was in that old system for so long that even though I was intentional wanting and calling for a bit more space, also with your encouragement, less days in the office. The part of me that was so conditioned to thinking that a booked a schedule 6 months in advance with 50 people on your wait list was success.
Yes.
And I had no room to breathe. I didn't even like my old schedule. I didn't even look to even see what the day looked like. I'd showed up because I knew it was going to be completely full. And I knew if one person canceled, there's 50 people waiting for that spot. Mm-hmm. So where was I actually? Was I actually being intentional, tuning into the people that day? I didn't even pay attention. I was like, "Oh, cool." I was in the now.
We don't get taught that originally, right? That is. I just want to touch on that because the programming can be really strong for practitioners through any kind of schooling program. That open a clinic or work at a clinic, put your time in, and eventually you'll be book solid all the time, that's success. And sure, that does entail getting decent enough results and connecting with people in a beautiful enough way that they do want to come and see you. Like, there is the tangibility of that, but that changes.
And there's so much more that equals to success.
There's so much more.
And so now there is a place, of course, I had to build a practice, and I was in that first year in a bit of building, and then my practice built to a place that I got comfortable. And I was like, oh, great, look at this. The schedule is nice and full. There's people on the wait list. I'm comfortable. And then that's when I get this intuitive booming voice that say, oh, by the way, Pam, you're dropping your RMT license and you're going to have to start this building all over again. And I was like, what the heck? I just felt comfortable again. I was just in this rhythm where my schedule felt like really comfy. And then this past, not quite a year, almost a year next month, it'll be this kind of energy of rebuild again. And that energy of like, oh my goodness, there's not really people on my wait list, but people are getting in when they need to. And my days, mostly 90% of my days, like they fill up, like the week is mostly full, but I'm not used to seeing it like build last minute. And so that's been a huge practice of mine of like surrendering into. That's exactly kind of how I've wanted to be in service to people kind of in that now, what's happening, what's alive in their system now when they want to book in, and I'm available for them. I can't say, oh, well, I'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah, you have more flexibility now, right?
Right. And so there's a part of me that needed to really sink into the safety of that. And I think that as I learn how to be more comfortable with it and let those layers shed of fear, that then my schedule can do whatever I want and it's okay. It can be a little bit quieter, it can be super full and it's okay. Like, I'm not going to judge it one way or the other. I'm trying to get to that place, and I'm like done a much better job this year than I have in the past of getting to that place. But also what I've noticed in hindsight, when I looked at the places in my week that were maybe a little quieter than others, it was exactly that. It was when I needed time to myself. It was when other parts of my life were too busy and that was a priority. I had to put focus there.
Yeah.
It was when I was going through a major change and upgrade in my own system, and there was so much happening in my own body that I only had a certain percentage to give. And the priority was me in that moment, for me to move through an integration or an activation with my own self, so then I can be on the other side of that, a better version of me, and then therefore a better practitioner. And so that serves my practice, is when I take the pause to allow my own system to just surrender into my own evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't always take pit stops as practitioners. I know doctors, I know healers of all kinds. And there's a few things that I'm seeing in our society right now. And one of those is that so many healers I know are burnt out. They're holding so much. I've experienced this before. The amount of change and transformation and rapid evolution that we're in on this planet right now is no small thing. So just a shout out of gratitude and support, and all the coaches and guides and practitioners and doctors and nurses out there that are working really hard, holding a lot of space for a lot of people. And it can be a lot, first responders, they're right in they're first quite often. I'm not a first responder. I am more of a second or third or fourth responder. It seems like faster now. People come kind of straight to us more quickly, I find now, instead of waiting till they've seen 20 or 30 doctors, because they know that they could address some things differently or in tandem or at the same time of, hey, I'm going to go at this a few different angles. But I will say that life gives us pit stops. If we're not paying attention, it'll give it to us when we don't want it or we're not ready for it. But I am being more intentional in my own life now of when do I need a break or when do I need rest? And I have to be really careful as a human design manifestor. I don't know if it's that or just energy or whatever. If I even have the thought during the day when I'm working, oh, I'm tired, I need a break, there's usually a cancellation immediately or within an hour or two. And it's comical.
How many times in the first year that we got cancellations at the exact same hour as each other? We're like, do we need to do a trade? Is this what the energy is?
It's like, oh, I need some treatment, or I need a walk, or something is happening in me where I need a bit of a breather. I need a pit stop, and that's okay. And I used to judge it because there's a few threads we're talking about here. One is the scarcity model that can happen of, well, we got to earn a living. And sometimes what I see happening in myself, especially in the past, not so much anymore, I generally have a really full schedule and I have a huge waiting list, and I'm grateful for that. And, a lot of practitioners would say, "Oh my God, that's so good." And it is. I'm really, really grateful. And it is also hard to be flexible and spontaneous with a schedule that is really, really full, or where there's a giant wait list. And so I'm going through a bit of transformation and rebirth on my offerings, on what I want to bring forward, because I have more clarity on that now. And it took time to cultivate the deeper levels to be able to bring different offers forward, to be of service in a higher level or a different way that is really healthy for me and healthy for my clients. And so if you're a practitioner, this can kind of be a bit of a sticky zone, especially in alternative medicine, where we really are focused on results. We're focused on showing up. Sometimes we show up too much. Sometimes we're giving too much. We're trying all the things. Is that the financial piece can be a stressor, because people have to pay to see us. It is very different than the modern conventional system where, especially if you're in Canada, it's, your air quotes, kind of paid for.
MSP.
I don't know if we want to unpack that today. Maybe that's another podcast. But essentially, you could go to the doctor, a Western doctor, or the hospital, and you don't have to pay. And there is such exquisite beauty in that. And there's some downsides. What I find for us as practitioners, and I'm going to generalize here for a moment, that in some ways we are held to a much higher standard because people are paying out of pocket or they're using benefits, and it's not the same thing. So it's almost like we have to get results if we want to pay our rent or pay the mortgage or eat properly. You have to find a way. So there is like the tangible, real life 3D motivation that you better get some results and you better connect with people in a really powerful way, or they're not going to come back to see you because it's optional.
Such a good point. Because how many times if you can think about, people can think about how many times have they gone to maybe their Western doctor, and if they grafted each visit, and if they thought, okay, how many of these visits actually got me the results I was looking for? And what percentage is that? Like,
how many
it's okay,
times?
but it's okay, it's free. So I'll just go again, even though maybe the percentage of results is quite potentially, not for everybody, but could be quite low.
Yeah.
But there is still going, well, it's free, so I'll continue to go to this thing that only works a small potential, percentage.
Yeah, sometimes you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And this isn't in no way knocking or undermining doctors in any profession anywhere. Nurses, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is I've noticed that I've had patients that come in, they've literally seen maybe 5 or 6 specialists. They've seen 10, 15, 20 doctors. I've had patients that have seen 50 doctors. I'm not even kidding you, over like a 20-year period. They are still struggling with the same issues or marginally better. And I think, oh my goodness, that is so sad. What's happened? And they're sitting here in front of me saying, "Doc, you better get this sorted out right away." And I'm like, whoa. I haven't been on a 20-year journey with you. Let's take a breath for a second.
Yeah.
I do have the intention that we're going to help you or get this sorted out, or I might know somebody else who can. Maybe I send them to you. Maybe I send them to other practitioners that I feel are an even better fit or have something they need. I'm going to keep seeing them too. But I often say this over and over again, health is a team sport. Everybody has different gifting. There's different ways to do things. And what somebody needs at a different time of their evolution or on their healing journey, it may change and it may be different. And that may put me in a space to say, actually, I don't think you need me anymore. I think you need to take a break from this way of working and now go see Pam, or now go see this person or this person or this person, or a combination of the few. They're going to take you the next mile or two, then maybe come back and see me when you're ready. And then away we go again. And so sometimes there can be quite a bit of pressure as a practitioner. And I want to dovetail into that a little bit with this next question, just came up. What are you finding or have found is the hardest thing about being a practitioner in the way that you are now?
I think exactly kind of in the same theme of what you're talking about. It's the pressure I put on myself to get a certain result and within a certain session. And that place of where do I start bringing more client education on like the energy of being patient with ourselves, and knowing that sometimes the root of someone's discomfort or someone's activation is going to take a few layers. and there is this place, I think, for us like that these people are paying for out of their pocket to see me. And there is like that last resort kind of energy that's behind it. And so sometimes there has been like this place where I'm like, oh man, how can I like, I'm always wanting to deliver the best I can every session, but then it's a pressurized energy too, sometimes underneath it. Like if they're new to that, or I'm like, oh, how are they gonna, if I don't really hit the nail on the head for what they think they are here for, are they gonna come back? And, or if they have a shift in their system that is so graceful, will they, and they're just kind of starting their path, will they be able to see that the unraveling started with that session, or are they not being able to actually notice that? And then we start a journey together, and then all of a sudden they have disappeared because the understanding of the onion unpeeling isn't quite understood, or the idea that, whoa, that shift of myself was so graceful, I think it just happened, versus it been like kind of unraveled through an observation of consciousness.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of get like this, a bit of like, oh, how do I express the magic of this in a way that is understood so people stick with their own path? And when people, and then I take it kind of that I'm learning and trying my best, and I have gotten a lot better over 20 years to be more gentle with myself, and less like, oh man, I could have done better for their understanding. Not so much in the session, because I always know the session is going to wrap up in the best ability in my day, but could I have educated better? Could I have inspired better? That type of that feeling of going, oh, can they recognize the growth of this and the quantum leaps that this session actually created for their life, and are they going to be hungry for more, or is that it? Yeah.
Well, and trusting that, especially at this point in my career too, trusting that people show up at the exact time that they need to, for the right reasons. This is an intention I show up with. Kind of going back to how to set up your day as a practitioner. One of the things that I do every morning is I ask myself, why am I here? Mm-hmm. And I like to remind myself, why am I here today? Like, what is my actual purpose for being here right now? And it's like, oh yeah, to be of service at the highest level possible, to create miracles wherever there's time and opportunity for that, to help people find their own answers, to be a beautiful mirror, to provide a safe space for the nervous system to heal. And, I might go through a different mantra or a different set of those things every morning, because I want to be really clear. And if that shifts and I'm not sure about why I'm there, then I know I've got some work to do, because I think there is that pressure and responsibility sometimes, and I'm okay with it, especially at this point, that I'm okay with people putting some pressure on me. I even like it a little bit of like, all right, let's get in there, because I want them to hold me to a high standard. That is why I'm here. They talk about that in Gene Key 18 as well. It's not just the perfection. The integrity is that we are here to hold a higher standard or build a higher standard. And I think that is a responsibility inherently built in me, or that I've taken on in some idea or belief or whatever that might be, however it got inside me, that is part of my purpose for being here, is that I want to elevate the levels of medicine regardless of the modality, that we can hold higher standards. And I also love the profession that I'm in, because we have time with people, because we've chosen that. At least that's how I've set up my practice. I want to know more about that person in front of me. I want to understand so I can get to the root issue more effectively, so I can get better results, that they can live a healthier life with vitality and enthusiasm and happiness. And, it sounds really good on paper, but is another thing to deliver on that. And so what has it made me do is really address those things within me. And this is kind of coming back full circle now, that so many practitioners that I've met that are really gifted and know how to deliver supreme results, they have had to do that for themselves, especially if you're in alternative medicine, or you got into guiding or coaching, could be hypnotherapy, could be human design, gene keys. It's usually because that modality, BodyTalk, acupuncture, has had a profound influence on your life. I believe that is changing a little bit now, because my kids, for example, are growing up with Chinese medicine. They're growing up with alternative medicine, homeopathics, herbals, energy work, whatever. So it is becoming normal for them that if that is their pathway, it's more easily found. But for a lot of us, we needed something to help us find it. And it's often our own pain, our own heartbreak, issues romantically. Sure, that's a top topic, but pain, something, some kind of issue, illness, recurrent, patterns that got us into this. And I'm so grateful for that. And that we have a dharma, we have a destiny for a reason. And I love seeing it awakening even further. And so it's been one of the greatest gifts to witness you as a practitioner grow, expand, move through challenges together, because there is real challenges being a practitioner. It is not all roses day to day. We have really tough cases sometimes. There's deep set chronic illness that have been there for 30, 40, 50 years, and they're looking for that to shift. And I believe that the right guidance and tools and modalities can help people find that for themselves, because I don't believe I heal anybody. They do. But they may need some guidance and some support and some tools and resources to get there. And that is deeply gratifying. I believe this is some of the most gratifying work that is in existence on the planet, and it can be challenging. And I wonder if you might share and take your time thinking about this. What were some of the hardest moments as a practitioner that you've experienced?
I think it's, I'm trying to think of even these places. Ones that come up to my mind right now is when if I transition clinics and I'm having to cut therapeutic relationship with people because I won't be in the area anymore. That's always a bit gut wrenching, and sometimes there's projections there that I end up having to move and weave through. And I think that comes from that place too, where people think that you're doing something for them that they can't, where this is a place where I'm not healing you, I'm just helping you on your journey and to blossom into your own self. And my journey with you is over because I'm feeling called to go this direction now and somewhere else. And there's an evolution in that. So there's that aspect. And there's also, I think I've been quite blessed to not have anything quite tragic or anything to happen in my practice with any clients or anything, where I can look back and go, whoa, that really messed up there. Or that was a big moment for me where I need to check myself or anything like that. I'm quite, I've been graced with a lot of blessed sessions and relationships with my clients. And I also have to recognize in my system that in the moments where I feel struggle and pain, I like to sit in that area too. I'd like to kind of sit in that and move through it. And once I bypass through it, I'm so good at looking at the light in that or the gift in that often now when I'm asked to reflect back on difficult moments, I have a hard time remembering what they are. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, what was it? Because
we worked through it.
I moved through it in a way that there was such a place of wisdom that created from that one piece that I can't see it as a struggle anymore. Yeah. So it's a hard question because I don't regret anything.
Oh, that's powerful too. There's no right or wrong answer. And definitely what you shared there, because I moved practice from the Lower Mainland. Langley, I'd practiced there for nearly 10 years before I came to Vernon. It was so hard. I had cultivated so many amazing relationships with patients that, you get to see their friends, their family, their kids. You get to see them go off and get married and grow up, or especially I'd treated a lot of fertility cases where they didn't have kids and then they had kids and then you see their kids too. And it's really powerful. And I'm as human as anybody. And, from a practitioner standpoint, we're not impervious to, the human aspects of emotions and things. So it was so hard for me to leave that space and leave that practice that it was, gut wrenching is a good one. I struggled, and then I definitely had patience. And, I think in some ways I was grateful for that, but there was literally patience says, no, you can't leave. And had that. Being serious, looking me in the eyes, you can't leave me. You can't leave here. And I was not seeing my kids all the time. I was driving back and forth. We had already moved up here. There's all these things. And I'm like, oh, what am I doing? But I had a hard time leaving that space because I felt responsible. I felt like, what are they going to do? my colleague and I were doing such unique work that it's not like I could just refer them next door to find the same thing. So that took a lot of sessions, a lot of support, my own levels of therapy, somatic sessions, acupuncture, walks in the forest, deep breathing, tears of how to make a transition that I knew I needed to make for myself. Mm-hmm. And it took a lot. It took a lot to do that. It was a challenge because as a practitioner, in the way that I love to work, I deeply care about people. I deeply care about humanity. I think that is really important for the pathway of where we're going on the planet, that it's part of me. I'm in it with my full heart all the time. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is one of the beautiful things I've been able to witness in you, is you are in it with your full heart, which also sometimes lends some difficulty, because if I don't get the results that I want in the way that I want them and how fast I expect them, I feel that in my heart too. Mm-hmm. And it's something to work through. And I'm grateful to be in it in this way. It's real and it's tangible. And the challenging moments of, seeing illnesses that I can feel intuitively are not going to resolve and that I can't do anything about it, those are challenging sometimes. Or where somebody's about to transition, they're about to leave their physical form. They know it, I know it, but we're still having a session. And there can be profound beauty in those moments too, of a deep, loving, resonant connection of a human experience.
Yeah.
Even though there's something, shifting that is going to be really powerful and impactful for everybody. So
I can mirror that too.
Yeah.
Like, there's a couple of clients, not a lot of my curve, there's a couple of clients where they come in and go, you are my last resort. And then there's been a person I'm thinking of, an example of working with their system and going, I can't actually, this path that they're on for whatever's happening in their mental state is just something that I can't actually observe a change in.
Yeah.
I'm either not the right person or they're meant to be moving through this in their lifetime. And so but they're not in a place of a stability where I can say, this is just your journey. Mm-hmm. And I actually can't, I can't observe change. And that part is like, so then there is a place in me, okay, is there a place, oh my gosh, I'm not the right practitioner, or I'm not doing well enough? Or is there a place where I can tune in and like actually listen to their soul and ask, in that innate wisdom of their body, is there a different practitioner that I can send you to? Or if there's not, then this is their journey that they signed up for. Mm-hmm. And maybe this potential psychosis that they're in, and I can't balance it. I can't bring enough coherence to the brain to allow that, because this is their journey. And then allowing, and that feels emotional to me, is when you have to watch them walk away from trying a couple sessions and knowing that they have to continue on and they're suffering. And there's nothing really I could observe that makes change. Because again, there's a knowing sense that they're moving through something deep karmically for themselves. And that's always heart-wrenching, where I kind of get that innate, no, you can't do anything here. There is no priority to observe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
There's so many blessings in being a practitioner, mm-hmm. and I'm so grateful that I found this pathway. I'm grateful that you found this pathway. Mm-hmm. I'm grateful that our pathways have converged.
I'm grateful that you plucked me out of something and asked me to come work with you.
It was time. You were ready for change in some way at a soul level, I think. And the trajectory that you're on is what a fascinating journey. And so there's a couple more things that I'd love to dive into before we wrap this up. And one of them is, what are you most excited about over the next, 6 to 12 months for yourself personally, but also professionally? And maybe that ties into humanity or something like that. But what's really moving through you right now?
Yeah. I am obsessed right now with the shift that we're in as a collective, especially coming up at the end of this year. We're moving through a really big one, or we're shaking away like a lot of old systems. So I'm super excited to see what the next couple of years is going to bring, in a way of that place of integrity, where we can bring that more integrity into society, mm-hmm. and my role in that. And I know I have a role in that. It's not like a thing anymore. I'm like, oh no, I'm not a part of this movement. I know I am.
Yeah. And actually, what do you feel is your role? And I just wanted to add that in your stream here.
Yeah. Well, role model on that. And so this is a place where laying down the structure for a more, I'll say, harmonious life, offer to humanity, and to start walking in that way in a way that it's like to look over my shoulder at the people following me going, hey, look, you can do it too. Come follow this way. And there is a lot of bliss over here. There is a high vibration of living over here. And I'm going to live it, not to abandon you, but to show you.
Leading by example.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I feel. And so there is this place where sometimes I don't really tune into what's happening in a lot of like the older parts of the old structures of the world. And I'm aware of what's happening there, but I'm living in a different vibration. Again, not through avoidance, deep awareness of what's going on, but because somebody has to hold a new grid energy and actively live it.
Yeah.
And put the seeds of life into it so that there is a bigger foundation of space for more people to kind of climb onto. And so my role is to keep seeding this place of bliss. So it's not a bad role because I'm in it.
Sounds like a pretty good role.
Yeah.
I can definitely say there's something that happens when I'm on your treatment table where you put your hands on my head or something. I don't even know what you're doing sometimes. And I just go into this like deeply relaxed state really quickly.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're asking me questions and I can't even formulate a word or like what? And there's some energy that moves through my system that just has me let go, surrender. And I know that there's healing that happens and I don't need to understand it. Partly, I think, you and I know each other really well and I have a lot of trust there that I can really let go. But there is something that is really stabilizing and safe in your energy field that invokes big changes really, really quickly, fairly smoothly too. And sometimes I can't even articulate what's happened, but I just feel more like myself again. Or if there's any energy that maybe I've picked up or I'm getting a little bit out of balance or off track, or I'm maybe spiraling or spinning in my own fields that I'm looking to kind of pull through that. Sometimes I could be on your table for like 5 or 10 minutes and that all shifts and I get up and then I'm like, oh, here I am again. Wow, that was really deep, really quickly. And how much actually can heal in the body, or, if it's a somatic thing or physical pain or whatever, that often diminishes or dissolves altogether. And it's not even needing to be named or spoken all the time. And maybe sometimes it does need to be named. And so I just want to thank you for all the sessions and treatments that I've been so grateful to receive from you. And where we're going, we talk about the time of the great change. I am really excited. And there is, there's a realness to it right now. There's a depth. I do see a lot of people really struggling in different ways. I see a lot of people having incredible breakthroughs, and it seems like both are happening right now simultaneously. And, to wrap this back together, and, for those that are Gene Keys fans, you'll get this, but you don't even have to know Gene Keys. Our greatest wounding, our greatest core wounds are our greatest blessings and our greatest gifting as well. And when we come into a space of acknowledging that and seeing that and working with that or getting support with it, it starts to unfold in the most beautiful way that you couldn't really write a script for, but it does read like an incredible story. And so if there's any words of advice, maybe I'd say it this way to leave our listeners with, what kind of story can we write for humanity? And what's your words of wisdom for people listening to this that do feel the great change, that are going through big transformations or big changes or big challenges? Anything that shows up just intuitively, what would you say to that right now?
So I'm being shown a path and a bunch of footsteps, or feet actually, walking up this path. And there's a really bright white light with a golden center, a certain distance up the mountain. And it feels like a portal. And I think what is being asked right now is keep walking. And there's this understanding of, sometimes we think that we get to a certain place on the mountain, we think this is the top. And you look around, you're like, this is a great view. I'm feeling really good. I feel super healthy up here. I feel quite activated. I think my heart's just shining away. And we might limit ourselves because we don't actually have quite understood what our potential actually is. And when we start to feel, when we've been moving out of a place where humanity has been quite in mental, emotional, and physical trauma, and when we start to feel health from there, that feels so freaking good. But that's, for me, the baseline that's a neutral place where there is so much from that opposite end of the spectrum where we can go so much deeper into our actual expression of what we are capable of as humans. And I think that's quite supernatural where we could go. And so there's a place where sometimes I have found that, when we're not in a struggle, or we're not in suffering, or we're not, trying to chase away pain or a heartache or a certain emotion, and we're feeling pretty good, we stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm saying keep walking because there's more.
Yeah, don't stop.
Yeah.
There's always more. Mm-hmm. That is really beautiful. Thank you for helping so many find the more in their systems and open up their minds and their hearts and their bodies unconsciously and consciously. That, there's really profound and beautiful things to experience here, and healing is one of them. And, we get to help people with that. So thanks for showing up in the world, being you, offering your gifting and being of service.
Thanks for having me on this world.
Yeah, it's a time to be alive. I believe we chose to be here.
Yeah.
Do you want to share any offerings or how people can work with you and take in the things that you're doing now or, coming up over the next few months?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to. I love practicing one-on-one as well as in groups. They both are such a passion for mine. So you could go on to my website, just pamdhillon.com. There's a booking link in there. It's a little more information, but booking in one-on-one for your own session to help you move through all these things for yourself. If it's release or activation or both, you can do it in person if you're in the area in the Okanagan, or you can do it online. So the limitation of spaces and distance doesn't matter. This is consciousness-based healing.
Yeah.
We're not based into consciousness is not just in one room. I don't need to use my physical hands to treat. So an invitation for everybody to come in that personal way. But also I've got group sessions that I do online every month. Wild and Wise Collective. I offer Wild and Wise gatherings. That's in-person circles every couple of months. We just pop those in.
Which I've been to many over the years. They've been super powerful.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen.
Never know. It's a bit
but
wild.
It's always epic.
Yeah. Yeah. The online offering for the group is like a group BodyTalk, but the gatherings in person could be anything from breathwork to constellations to deep shares to whatever wants to come through. So that's always a ton of fun. And what I'm really passionate right now about is my containers. And we spoke a little bit about spending the time with clients in a deeper way.
What does a container look like with you?
So it's weekly one-on-one sessions, but also continuous access 24/7, just being able to voice memo and text and support in those in-between moments where we're not quite feeling, is this, where's the session going, or how am I integrating this? Or I've got this issue with a loved one that I don't know how to navigate in conversation. And I get to tune in and help bring guidance to the day-to-day aspects of life.
Yeah.
And I build this energy around each person, holding them in the container that is quite quantum and a vortex of layers that they need. And we adjust and rebuild and shed and put more layers in depending on what their intention is and what they're working through. So I'm constantly kind of connected and tuning in that way. So it's an agreement that I get to tune into your system 24/7 for the time that we agree. So it's quite intimate because I'm tapping in constantly.
Yeah.
And then always bringing awareness to things that I'm noticing, and they're obviously what they're noticing. And that's where I get to then really bring in the education in, because sessions for an hour can go quite quick. But here we get to do that big movement, that big energy in a session, but also have, education and check-ins and the places in between where sometimes we can get lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love this new offering.
That's powerful. Yeah. And is it different timeframes depending on what somebody wants and what you guys sort of collectively come to together?
Yeah. I kind of first put it out as 6 weeks, 13 weeks, and 22 weeks. I love those numbers. But I'm noticing more organic conversations that are happening now with my container clients. It's like, okay, what time frame do we actually really need? So again, I'm kind of putting aside my numbers agenda.
Yeah. Very good.
And just listening to the wisdom and the innate priority of what that client needs. And we move through a timeline that's appropriate for what they're working through.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that offering out into the world as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's yeah, let's wrap it up here. Thank you. I think that this is gonna, hit people on a deep level, because there's a lot of energy that happens in the in-between space. And I know there's a million other things we could have got into, but I trust that this was exactly how it needed to show up today. And thanks everybody for tuning in to another New Human Experience. We'll see you on the other side.